Hi, welcome back to my channel. My name is Carter Walker. I love talking about movies, music, comics, and games. And I've been super busy the last 2 or 3 weeks, but I wanted to sit down and make a quick video just ranking the Guardians of the Galaxy movies. It's going to be pretty direct, pretty short. I'm not going to share a ton of my thoughts on these movies. So I just hit stutter button. For the first two, I'll give them a little more of my in-depth thoughts on, and then I'll throw the holiday special in there as well as like an honorable mention kind of. It's hard to rank that. And then the third one, I'll be pretty brief, seeing as I've covered that on my channel already. So yeah, I forgive my appearance. I've had a really long day. Just wanted to do another quick little video before I start the week. And so I don't know when this will go live, but coming in fourth place is the holiday special. I don't really know like where else you can put this one. Honestly, it's already at a disadvantage. It's just an hour-long special. Honestly, it's more of an honorable mention to me. It's still pretty decent. I enjoy my time with it. I had to make sure I was actually recording. I really enjoyed it, watching it. It was very heartfelt, very fun. Had a lot of great banter. I love the focus on Drax and Mantis, and then the bombshell of, Mantis is Peter Quill's sister. I really enjoyed that. It had a lot of fun. Some great jokes that I laughed at. I've only seen it like once or twice. It's just something that you can only rewatch like a certain period of time, and so like when I did my Guardians of the Galaxy rewatch, I didn't watch it. I was just like, oh yeah, Mantis is Quill's sister. That's about all you need to know. And Cosmo's there. Cosmo the GOAT. Full disclosure, all three of these movies are interchangeable for me. I think all of them are 10 out of 10 movies. I adore every single one of them. I am extremely biased. I love the MCU films. I adore them. I worship them, if you can't tell. I have a poster of Volume 2 right there. But I love them. They're my formative childhood movies. And so, yeah, I'm super biased, but all three of them could be #1 on any day. So, but yeah, that's just like an honorable mention. And then let's get into the real list. Coming in at number 3, and I know I'm going to get crucified for this. I really haven't like sat down and just been like, this is 3 because XYZ. This is 2 because XYZ. These movies are very formative to me in my teenage years. Like, they're extremely important to me. I adore the Guardians of the Galaxy movies. All 3 are like top 10 MCU for me. And so I really can't go wrong with any single one of them. I think putting one below the other isn't slander necessarily or like dissing a movie. I just necessarily at this time enjoy one of the other Guardians of the Galaxy movies more. And so for that reason, coming in at number 3, and I'm going to get shot for this, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1, the original 2014 classic. I love this movie, and it being at number 3, I'd rank this at like number 3 or top 5, top 10 for an MCU ranking. Like, it doesn't mean it's a bad movie. I definitely think it's a 5-star movie. I really enjoy it. There's a lot that I just adore here. Namely, Peter Quill's story, I think, is very strong in this one. The introduction of the Guardians is all very memorable. What holds it back for me is, again, this is an issue I have with all the Guardians movies, is just some of the jokes. It just depends on my mood. It's a mix for me. Is just the humor and the jokes sometimes don't land as well. I honestly like adore this movie. I really don't have any negatives for it. My mixed would be that I really dislike Nebula here. I just think Karen Gillan just goes way over the top with her performance. All of her lines are written to be, out of my way. Thanks, Dad. Oh, we won't fail you this time. He's the most powerful man. She's just like yelling all her lines, and I get it, like she's supposed to be so over the top, but it just gets so old and so grating after a while. Every line is she's just shrieking, and I know she's supposed to be an angry, over the top character, and I mean, she screams, I think, maybe more in Volume 3 than she does in this one, but I just enjoy her in Volume 3. She's a more, sympathetic character, more redeemable character in that movie, and so her arc in this movie really just kind of goes nowhere. It just peters out. She runs away from Thanos, runs away from Ronan, gets gets set up for later on in the movie. And I mean, as much as I sound like I just dislike that, I also think Ronan is just terrible in this movie. Ronan, they really fumbled the bag with Ronan. Even on rewatch, and it's my MCU apologist coming out, I was like, maybe Ronan isn't so bad. Lee Pace really tries his best. Just the character is just written to be so bland and one note, like, my father and his father. Dang, man, like, you should, James Gunn, maybe spend some more time with him. And so, as much as I love this movie for its jokes, its soundtrack, the visuals are absolutely incredible. There are a few fixes here that look kind of goofy. The characters are perfect. I think this movie honestly does so much right. that I can just overlook every negative and mixed aspect I have. And again, they're not many. They're like less than a handful of nitpicks and mixed aspects for this movie. Most people would rank this number one, and I respect it. I can totally see why. If you rank Guardians of the Galaxy as number one, dude, power to you, man. Hats off. This movie is incredible. It kickstarted a trend of movie studios and trailer companies going back to like the 70s, 80s, and 90s, grabbing all these popular songs and mixing them in, making their shows super duper fun and quirky and funny. Star-Lord especially, and Rocket, to me, have always been the MVPs of these movies. Star-Lord's arc in this movie is really emotional. Rocket is also fun as well. I definitely prefer his storyline going forward. I feel like Rocket's arc is just like the grand overarching story of the Guardians movies, and James Gunn, again, you can just tell how much he loves these characters. James Gunn puts his homework in, he puts his effort into these movies, and I just adore it. It's so good. For me, Guardians of the Galaxy, even though it's number 3, still a 10 out of 10. Our runner-up is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. And yes, it might just be recency bias for number 1, but I have always had a soft spot for this movie. I think Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 is one of the most rewatchable MCU movies. I've seen it like a dozen times, if not more. It is just so much fun, but also has such a bite to it in the last half that I really enjoy. And I think that every issue I had with the first movie is expanded upon except for one. And expanded upon in a good way. I mean, like, for example, Nebula in the first one really bothers me. In this one, she still bothers me, but not as bad. And so, like, yeah, it's like a worst case scenario. Like, yeah, she still yells and screams and is like, ah! It's like, yeah, it's still grating, but she's not in it as much. So she's not yelling as much, which is a plus. Just kidding. I actually enjoy, Nebula as she goes on, but she's less annoying in this movie for sure. However, that does mean that the jokes here are just dialed up to 20 instead of being an 11. And so that means for every joke that I just die at, there's a joke that I just don't laugh at. For example, a lot of the stuff with Nebula, like, it's not ripe. And then Drax's turds don't make me laugh, but like almost everything else does. Oh yeah, also the High Priestess, Aisha, like walking out and then it just jams. And then like them laughing at Taserface. I just named like every bad joke in the movie. There's probably more. For me, I love most of the jokes. I love like the Harbulary batteries. I love Trash Panda. I love Rocket's wink. I love all the one-liners in this movie just make me laugh super hard. Like Kurt Russell, especially in the end, like, that's my freaking father. And I'm just like hamming it up here with my whisper yells. I guess the cat found the microphone. I just barely rewatched this like 2 weeks ago, and I just had a great time with it. Like, I can just sit down. These movies are my feel-good movies, man. I can just sit down and really enjoy myself here. And for the positives of this movie, like I mentioned before, the villains are way better here. Like, I mean, Aisha isn't the best, don't get me wrong. I still think the Sovereign are a misfire here. One of my nitpicks, but I think that, not a nitpick because it is an actual issue with the film, my bad. I think that Ego is so interesting, and I love him as a villain. People who hate on Ego, man, I love him. Maybe it's just my Kurt Russell bias, but I think that Kurt Russell just brings such a sinister role to the movie, and it's like, the Guardians movies always have a darker edge to them, a darker, like, bite, undertone, whatever it may be. There's a lot of graphic things in there, like deaths and scenes and whatnot, but I think that Kurt Russell just brings, like, the perfect amount of, like, just sinister to this movie, and I love it. Like, the last third is perfect for this movie. I love the last third. It is such a great buildup of, like, tension and fear and anxiety, and then the battle, to me, is better than the battle for the Dark Aster and the battle for Xandar. I love the battle on Ego's planet. I get absolute chills. I mean, I'm getting chills thinking about The Chain by Fleetwood Mac playing right now as Star-Lord stands up to him and Yondu's, like, cheering him on, dude. I love this movie. I need to do a full review for it because I think it's severely underrated. People overhate on this movie like crazy. Like, it still gets its dues, but maybe underrated isn't the right word. It's overhated. People are like, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 killed my family. Like, it's fine. It's a movie. But I really enjoyed it, man. I love Star-Lord's arc in this one, just with family and everything, and Rocket's arc with Yondu is so good as well. Just very meaningful and very heartfelt. And then Yondu's death at the end hits home. Father and Son by Cat Stevens playing. That's my favorite song of all time. Mostly because of this movie, and also just because Father and Son is, like, probably one of the greatest songs ever written. It just hits home, man. It's just so good, I love it. I love it. But all in all, I adore this movie, like I've said before. I think everything in this movie is dialed up to 20, which cannot work for a lot of people, but for me, I think it really works. The emotion here hits more than it did in the first one. Yeah, there's a lot more scenes that are like so over exaggerated that it can get a little tiring. And so I think that's why I put Volume 2 and Volume 1 neck and neck. Honestly, they can be interchangeable on either day. I think Volume 2 today, Volume 2 is number 2. I love it. There's a lot for me to love here. But of course, coming in at number 1, the new kid on the block, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. But when I saw this, and I waited to make my review like 3 or 4 days, I really didn't know what to say. And I just opened my mouth and started talking for 30 minutes, and I edited it down just a little bit. But I think what makes this movie so special is just the care and emotion that James Gunn puts in. I love MCU trilogies. Most of them are pretty good, apart from Iron Man and Thor. I mean, the Avengers quadrilogy, the Spider-Man trilogy, Captain America trilogy are just absolute like bangers after bangers. And then you have the Guardians of the Galaxy trilogy, which is a incredible trilogy, no doubt. But you can just tell that James Gunn puts so much love, care, and effort into these characters that it's just like unmatched. Looking at where the characters started to where they end up at the end of Volume 3 is like heartwarming and heartbreaking, because you can just see like so much has changed, so much is the same, and it just warms my heart. Like Volume 3 definitely has its fair share of problems. Tone, like I mentioned before, some of the jokes don't land, like I mentioned before. Maybe a few things could have been cut here and there, but watching it again in IMAX, like opening night with another crowd, it was like magic, man. I was crying, like full disclosure. Some of the stuff in there was like, but it's just so good, dude. Like, I adore Volume 3. I adore all these movies. I loved it. Volume 3, again, it might be just me nostalgia, but like it just hit all the right notes for me at this time in my life. And Rocket's backstory was just incredible. And the High Evolutionary, Shakawudi Iwuji, just gave such an incredible performance along with Chris Pratt. Those two are like the MVPs of this movie. Like, Chris Pratt just gives such a heartfelt, his most personal performance, his most like, accessible. I think he does such a good job of being, such a strong leader. He's very determined to help his team, but he's also like hurting. You can see that he's just in so much pain over Gamora and over like his family on Earth, and there's just so much built up that he's been running away from for his whole life, and he doesn't know what to do. And then the main plot of Guardians 3 kicks in, and he finds that heroism in himself again, and it's just very touching. And then on the opposite side of that coin, you have like one of the most menacing and evil MCU villains with the High Evolutionary, who just gives such a raw and like wretched performance. Like, I saw a review of someone saying like, oh, I liked him, and then he started yelling, and he was just like typical MCU yelling villain. Like, yeah, he did yell, but like, dude, it's just like, to me, he was so much more, just because I think that he just commanded the screen and stood over every other person in the room in such a way. He made his presence felt. He used to be a stage actor, and you can tell that he was just so used to like using the scenery around him, and using like, he's very dynamic with how he like moves around the set and moves around the camera, and James Gunn just tracks him and follows him, make sure you can always see what the High Evolutionary is up to. And I think it really worked wonders for this movie, especially in the end. Like, his final scene is incredible. I adored it. I think that the hallway scene as well, action scene, goes down as one of the best MCU scenes of all time. The ending made me cry. There's a few things in here that made me cry. And I just think that James Gunn, for these characters, there's a lot that's wrong with this movie. Don't get me wrong. It's not a perfect movie by any means. But my love for the characters, the Guardians of the Galaxy, my love for James Gunn and his movies, my love for comic books, comic book movies, and just movies in general, just really came to the forefront of this movie. The Guardians movies make me so emotional, and that's why I love them so much. I was sitting there watching this movie, like crying, and then watching the hallway scene, and I was like, this movie is such a roller coaster. Like, but I was sitting there and I was like, I love comic book movies. I love comic books. I freaking love movies. I love all this shiz, dude. It's just magic. Like, it's just pure magic for me, and I am so happy that James Gunn got me that feeling again. It's been a minute, and I missed it. So for this moment, guys, Guardians 3, again, a 10 out of 10, just like Guardians 2, just like Guardians 1. All these movies are 10 out of 10, but for me, Guardians 3 today reigns supreme as my favorite Guardians of the Galaxy movie. Okay, guys, well, I apologize for that just very quick video that I threw together. I'm not even sure how it's going to look when I'm editing it, because my face is off-centered where I'm usually over here. But what did you think about Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3? Have you seen it yet? Let me know down in the comments below. Where would you rank it above all the Guardians of the Galaxy films? And just for kicks, throw the holiday special in there as well. Well, guys, I'm Carter Walker. I love movies, comics, and games almost more than anything in the world. And it's been fun to talk about it. In the meantime, take care. Have a great rest of your day.